So the next poem that we're going to be looking at is Last Supper, and that's by Lochhead. By the end of this video, I'm hoping that you will analyse the poem and create an annotated copy of the poem. If you can examine the language in the poem and produce your own annotated version of the poem, then you'll have been successful. As always, I have some notes for you, and I would suggest that you try and put them into your own words as much as possible and take a note of them on the back of your poem or in your notes. In this poem, Lochhead challenges our usual perception of women who've been betrayed by a partner who's been unfaithful. So instead of presenting the woman as a victim, she's depicted as preparing a final meal to mark the end of the relationship. She imagines herself and her girlfriends later gorging themselves on the lies and infidelity of her ex-lover. So it's not a very flattering depiction of the woman, yet it's quite truthful of the nature of some female friendships. This poem's written in free verse and it's separated into 4 stanzas. It's very technically accurate, and the exactness of all the sentences create this idea of control, even though there's not really a lot of punctuation, and it shows that the women's actions were cold, planned, calculating, which again really creates a strong sense of character. In stanza 1, we have a focus on the preparations for the supper and the reason for it. Stanza 2, the woman imagines celebrating the end of this relationship, and she feasts on her by imagining she's feasting on her ex-lover's carcass. And in stanza 3, we're showing the women as witches in the act of consumption. Well, in stanza 4, they're already looking for a new victim. So it's quite dark and quite sinister, but also a very wonderful poem. Lochhead uses all of our senses, not just states, to depict the carnal way the women devour the details of the end of the relationship. They're compared to scavengers, brutally picking away every last morsel until everything is being consumed greedily and ferociously. Interestingly, she reveals very few details of the unfaithful lover. And I think that there are many reasons for that, and I'm going to let you make your own decision on that. She explores many themes in this, some of them being the negative aspects of female relationships, that's a theme we've encountered before, and the corrosive and toxic relationships that exist between people. She also creates a very strong sense of character, and I want you to keep that in mind, as it's a strong feature of her work as well. As always, I'll be using the annotation key where word choice will be black, imagery will be red, and structure will be blue. Please make sure that you use some sort of key so you can work out what technique is to be linked with what part that you're saying. Last Supper. She is getting good and ready to renounce his sweet flesh, not just for Lent, forever. But meanwhile, she is assembling the ingredients for their last treat, the proper feast. After all, didn't they always eat together, rather more than rather well? So already when you open this poem or you look at this poem, Last Supper is so recognisable. It's got clear biblical allusions, connotations of finality, the end of something, but also really deep connotations of betrayal. We have that word renounce, which is quite a religious word that we almost link with religion, but it just means to abandon or forsake, and his sweet flesh is getting that sort of gory idea in there again. She's clearly getting ready to split up with someone here, not just for Lent, forever. So it shows a complete rejection that there is of that relationship, and really tells us that there's no hope of resurrection for the relationship. That resurrection's brought in the idea of Lent there. She's not just going to give it up for a wee while and go back to it, she's done with it forever. But meanwhile, she's assembling the ingredients for their last treat, the proper feast. She's making fun of, she's parodying a romantic meal here. She's showing real care and attention to making it, but actually the enjoyment in that comes because she's able to break up with that lover eventually. We then have another structural idea here in the parenthesis, which she uses quite frequently. After all, didn't they always eat together, rather more than rather well? The question that she poses there, this parenthesis, there's enjambment, and it shows that anger. The relationship was never very good. They spent a lot of time together, but it wasn't quality time that they were spending together. The tone in this is quite sort of dark, but she's also quite darkly humorous with it, and that's continued as the poem continues. So here she is, tearing foliage, scrambling the salad, maybe lighting candles even. Anyway, stepping back to admire the effect of the table she's made. And oh yes, now we'll have to lie on. The silverware, the nicely al dente vegetables, the cooked goose, he could be depended on to bring the bottle, plus betrayal with a kiss. So you've got word choice in that first line of tearing and scrambling, really violent actions. Tearing shows us the separation. There is no chance she's getting back together with him. Lighting candles, real contrast there with the violence of that last line. We usually light candles for romantic things. She's lighting candles because she's celebrating the end of this relationship. It's again very dark. More parenthesis, and oh yes, now she will have to lie on. The partner will have to suffer the consequences of their bad actions, as will she, but she's looking forward to those consequences. She uses a lot of puns, and that's one of the examples of pun that she uses. Again, adds that bit of humour to her writing. We have word choice of the cooked goose. I don't know if you've ever heard that as a pun before, but it really just means that the lover's been caught being unfaithful to her. He's up a creek without a paddle, I think is another way of saying it. We move on to the last couple of lines. He could be depended on to bring a bottle, plus betrayal with a kiss. We're coming back to that religious imagery again, reminiscence of Judas at the Last Supper. If he's bringing that betrayal, but he's pretending that there's nothing actually wrong, it really shows just how unforgivable the lover's actions are. But I think even the idea that he can be depended on to be someone who betrays her, I think that's so harsh and cutting, and really shows the strength of feeling that the speaker has here. Already she was imagining it done with, this feast, and exactly what kind of leftover hash she'd make of it among friends, when it was just the girls, when those three meet again. What very good soup she could render from the bones, then something substantial, something extra, tasty, if not elegant. We have the word choice of leftover hash in there. She's really looking forward to dissecting and discussing this horrible relationship or this betrayal with her friends. She's desperate to share those unpleasant details, which isn't a very nice light to portray the speaker in there. We have the girls, and that's in capital letters. It's a structural thing. It really shows the bond and the importance of friendship. But then we go into quite a sinister image there with when those three met again. The witches in Macbeth are referenced here, which is really negative and sinister. Again, not showing women in a very favourable light here. Almost like they're plotting the lover's demise and the end of the lover. It's quite frightening. What very good soup she could render from the bones, and it's shown again, it's a metaphor there to show how nourishing and satisfying really in the details of that breakup will be to her friends. It's very gory. It's almost like they're picking at his carcass, his leftovers, and it's so sinister. It really creates not a very nice impression of these women who are basking in the glory of this breakup and enjoying nothing more than a bit of man-hating here. Yes, there they'd be, cackling around the cauldron, spitting out the gristlier bits of his giblets, gnawing on the knucklebone of some intricate irony, getting grave and dainty at the pettigrew mouthfuls of reported speech. There's now not really any other way to beat around the bush here. There's such a blatant allusion to Macbeth's witches here. It's so sinister. The women are not being portrayed favourably here. They're acting in a sort of very negative way towards the lover. This idea of cackling, they're discussing the lover in a very unkind way, and that alliteration, it's quite a harsh repeated C sound, shows the nature of their discussion. They don't really care if they're going to hurt his feelings. They just want to get the information and plot together like the witches do. We move on to that bit where they're spitting out the gristlier bits of his giblets, gnawing on the knucklebone of some intricate irony. They are totally gorging themselves on the gossip here. It's so animalistic. They are loving being able to pick apart the lover's faults, and it's words like gnawing and spitting out and gristle that really help us understand that. It's so gory. They're really savouring it and enjoying themselves. You're gnawing on that knucklebone, and that's kind of what tells us here. We go down to that strange word pettigrew there, and it translates as little taste, which contrasts with the gluttony earlier in that stanza. They're taking little mouthfuls of the lover's infidelity, but they're doing it often. They really want to keep that coming. They want to hear more and more and more. That's rich, they'd splutter, munching the lies, the fat sizzling as sausages. Then they'd sink back, gorged on truth, and their own savage integrity sleek on it all, preening like corbies, their bright eyes blinking, satisfied, till somebody would get hungry and go hunting again. So we've got onomatopoeia and direct speech in that first line, but the onomatopoeia is really important. They're laughing in disgust at the lover, but actually their behaviours have been absolutely disgusting in the way that they've discussed and dissected that relationship. You've got the simile there, again bringing that food metaphor back in here, or the food image, sorry, munching the lies, fat and sizzling as sausages. It shows how much enjoyment they gain from sharing the details of that failed relationship, particularly because of the fact that it was infidelity. If you wanted to go even deeper into that, you could talk about the sausages and the phallic symbols that are associated with that, but I'll leave that up to you. We have the word gorged in there, and it's the behaviour's kind of the opposite to what we would expect. It really shows us that they are desperate to find out, and we have the savage integrity there. It really shows how hypocritical they are. They use that savagery to make themselves feel superior to men, and that's what helps them sort of feel better about the man hating that they do in this poem. We move on and we have another image of like corbies. It's an old Scottish word for crows, and it's associated with murder, so it's again a very negative impression of the women. Crows, I don't know how much you know about crows and the way that they eat their food, but that they're not very kind to their prey, and that they'll pick about it and they'll eat their eyeballs, and it's all very gory and disgusting, and again not a very nice thing to be referenced to. It's very dark, very negative. And again, continuing that animalistic idea and the word choice until someone would get hungry and go hunting again. The women are predators here. They really want the next person to come along. Who's going to come along next? Who's going to make a mistake? And what can we say bad about them? Thanks for listening to the video, guys. If you've got any questions, remember just to bring them to class and we'll answer the next day I see you. Thank you.